Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to be talking about a few of the different shading techniques, and I'll start by talking about a few of the different pencils that you'll come across. The letter and the number on a pencil signify the kind of lead that it contains. An H stands for hard, and these types of pencils don't leave so much lead on the paper, and the higher the number, the harder the pencil, and therefore the lighter the shade. And a B stands for black. These pencils are much softer and they leave more lead on the paper. The higher the number, the softer the lead, and therefore the darker the pencil. There's also an F pencil, which stands for fine point. These pencils are much harder, they have a finer point, and they're good for precision drawing, but not for shading. And lastly, there's an HB pencil, and this one is a cross between the hard and the soft pencils, and it's mainly used for light shading and outlines. There's a really great method of practicing your shading, and it's called a shading guide. This is a rectangle that's split up into segments, and you start off with the light shading, working away all the way up to the darker shading. So the first block should be left completely blank, and that's the lightest shade you can create. And then the darkest tone should be at the end. This is the darkest tone you can create with the pencil that you're using. And in this example I used a 2B pencil. So slowly work your way up the shading guide, making each segment darker than the previous. One important aspect of shading is pressure. So obviously the lighter the pressure, the lighter the shading, and the harder the pressure, the darker the shading. A shading guide is a great way of learning how to shade, as it's a way that you can practice the kind of pressure you need to create different tones with your pencil. So now we'll go over a few of the different shading techniques. Hatching. This is a technique where you draw a bunch of lines next to each other. Depending on how close or far apart they are, really changes up the shading. So if you have lines that are close together, then you have darker shading, and lines that are far apart create a lighter shading. You could also change up the length of the lines themselves and create a different kind of shading effect. Crosshatching. This technique is very similar to hatching, except you add lines going perpendicular to the original lines. And both hatching and crosshatching are great ways for shading with a pen. Stippling. This technique uses dots instead of lines, and depending on how close together they are, or the size of the dots themselves, it really changes the way the shading looks. This is another way of adding a different kind of texture to your drawing. Circulism. This is a technique where you shade in a circular motion, and it's most commonly used when you're working on portrait drawings and you want to create a really smooth skin tone. Squirkling. This is a technique where you use scribbles to create shading, darker and light depending on how close together and far apart you put the lines, and it's also another amazing way of adding texture to your drawings. Blending. This is a way of adding a smoothness to your drawings, almost like a Photoshop finish. You can use your fingers, or you could use a cotton bud, or a blending stick. Blending can give a really nice effect, but I'd probably recommend not to rely entirely on it in your drawings, and instead use a variety of the different shading techniques I've already talked about in this tutorial. Don't think too much about the kind of pencil that you should be using, it's more about personal preference. As you've probably noticed in quite a lot of my videos, I've been using a mechanical pencil for shading, and that's sometimes not recommended, but that's just a personal preference of mine. At the end of the day, it's completely up to you, and you can use any kind of pencil that you feel comfortable using. I really hope this video is helpful in some way, and if you have any questions then feel free to leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. So just practice as much as you can, and you can go back and use the shading guide with all the different shading techniques. So you could create a shading guide with the circulism or the cross-hatching and stuff like that. Just practice as much as you can, and the shading guide, I promise, is such a great way to learn. Drawing is really fun, and make sure you're using the materials that you're comfortable using, and find your own personal preferences. Don't let anyone tell you what kind of pencils you're meant to be using or anything like that. Just figure out the kind of shading techniques that you like, and I'm sure you'll do fine. Once again, thank you so much for all the support on this channel, and if you have any suggestions then feel free to leave them in the comments below as well. And if you enjoy this kind of content then make sure you're subscribed. And any likes, shares, favourites, that kind of thing is really appreciated, and it means so much to me. If you want to contact me, I have my Twitter, Facebook and Instagram links in the description box below, and feel free to contact me there, or if you have any questions or you want to show me your work, then I'll be sure to check it out. Once again, thank you so much, and see you all soon.